The night was calm at the United Nations Space Research Institute, UNSRI, in Geneva, Switzerland. Dr. Elena Voss sat alone in her dimly lit office, staring intently at a wall of monitors displaying streams of data from deep space. As one of Earth's leading xenobiologists, she had spent years studying signals from distant stars, hoping to find evidence of extraterrestrial life. But tonight, something unusual caught her attention, a faint, irregular pulse that didn't match any known cosmic phenomenon. Elena leaned closer to the screen, her dark eyes narrowing as she adjusted the frequency filters on her equipment. The signal grew clearer but remained fragmented, like static cutting through a broken radio transmission. Bursts of sound mixed with strange tones formed patterns that hinted at intelligence rather than randomness. Her heart raced as she realized this wasn't just background noise, it was a message. She replayed the recording multiple times, isolating parts of the transmission. Though much of it was garbled, certain sequences repeated themselves. With the help of translation algorithms designed for decoding alien languages, fragments began to take shape. Words emerged slowly, words that sent chills down her spine. Help, hunted, sanctuary. Elena froze, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Was this real? Could it be a hoax or some kind of glitch? She double-checked the source coordinates and discovered the signal originated from a remote region of space, far beyond human-controlled territory. It came from an area marked as uncharted on UNSRI maps, where no Earth vessel had ever ventured. Her mind raced with questions. Who, or what, was sending this message? Why were they asking for help? And why now? Elena knew she couldn't ignore this discovery. Gathering her notes, she rushed to the director's office, ignoring the late hour. Director Harris was not pleased to be woken up, but when Elena explained the situation, his irritation turned to concern. This could be nothing, he said cautiously, rubbing his temples, or it could change everything. I think we need to investigate, Elena insisted, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. If there's even a chance someone, or something, is out there needing our help, can we afford to do nothing? Harris hesitated, weighing the risks. Humanity had only recently begun exploring interstellar space, and tensions with neighboring species made every decision fraught with consequences. Still, the idea of turning away from a potential cry for help gnawed at him. After a long pause, he nodded. All right, we'll assemble a team to track the signal's origin. But tread carefully, Dr. Voss. If this is genuine, we don't know what, or who, we're dealing with. Back in her lab, Elena stared at the blinking cursor on her computer screen. Somewhere out there, someone was calling for help. For the first time in her career, she felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. This wasn't just another scientific puzzle. It was a moral test for humanity itself. Would they answer the call or turn their backs? 2 weeks after intercepting the mysterious signal, a UNSRI reconnaissance vessel named Odyssey arrived at the coordinates traced from the transmission. The crew, led by Captain Marcus Kane, consisted of seasoned astronauts, scientists, and security personnel. Among them was Dr. Elena Voss, who insisted on joining the mission to witness first contact with her own eyes. As they approached the source of the signal, anticipation filled the air. The destination wasn't a planet, but a cluster of derelict ships drifting silently in the void of space. Their hulls were scarred with burn marks and dents, evidence of battles long fought. Some vessels appeared abandoned, their lights extinguished, while others emitted faint glimmers of power. It was clear these ships had seen better days. Looks like a graveyard, muttered Lieutenant Harper, the ship's navigator, as he scanned the area. Who would send a distress call from here? Elena ignored the comment, her focus fixed on the largest ship in the center of the formation. Its design was unlike anything humanity had encountered before. Smooth, organic curves blended seamlessly with metallic surfaces, giving it an almost living appearance. That one, she said, pointing to the central ship. It's still emitting energy signatures. Let's investigate. After docking with the alien vessel, the team donned protective suits and entered cautiously. The interior was dimly lit, with walls that pulsed faintly, as if alive. Strange symbols glowed softly along corridors lined with debris. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. It didn't take long to find signs of life, or rather, survivors. In a large chamber resembling a makeshift shelter, they discovered a group of creatures huddled together. They were tall and slender, with translucent skin that shimmered under the light. Large, luminous eyes blinked slowly as they turned to face the intruders. Despite their frail appearance, there was something hauntingly beautiful about them. One of the beings stepped forward, its movements deliberate yet weary. It spoke in a melodic voice, producing sounds that resonated like music. Though incomprehensible at first, Elena quickly activated her translation device. After a moment of processing, the alien's words became clear. "You came." Elena took a step closer, her heart pounding. "We received your message," she replied carefully. "Who are you? Why did you call us?" The creature introduced itself as Zinara, leader of the Caliph, a species once thriving on a distant world. Her explanation was fragmented but chilling. The Caliph had been embroiled in a brutal war against another race, forced to fight for survival. Those aboard these ships were outcasts, individuals who refused to participate in the violence and were exiled as punishment. Now, hunted by their own kind, they sought refuge among the stars. As Zinara spoke, tension simmered within the human crew. Not all the Caliph seemed eager to cooperate. Some exchanged wary glances, whispering amongst themselves in low tones. Others avoided eye contact altogether, their body language defensive. Captain Kane noticed this too and signaled his security team to stay alert. "We can't trust them blindly," Kane muttered to Elena later, back aboard the Odyssey. Some of those aliens looked scared, but others, something felt off. Elena nodded reluctantly. She wanted to believe Zinara's story, but doubts lingered. Were they truly victims seeking sanctuary, or was this a ploy to infiltrate Earth? Either way, one thing was certain. Bringing the Caliph back to Earth would be a decision fraught with risk and controversy. As the Odyssey prepared to depart, Elena glanced at the damaged ships trailing behind them. For the first time, she wondered if humanity was ready for the responsibilities that came with playing savior to a fractured people. The journey back to Earth was tense and filled with uncertainty. The Caliph survivors had been brought aboard the Odyssey, their frail forms wrapped in thermal blankets as they huddled together in a makeshift holding area. Despite Zinara's assurances, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. There were too many unanswered questions, too many lingering glances exchanged between some of the aliens. Dr. Elena Voss spent most of her time observing the refugees, trying to piece together their story while keeping her scientific curiosity in check. She noticed subtle differences among them. Some seemed genuinely grateful for the rescue, their luminous eyes reflecting relief and hope. Others, however, avoided interaction altogether, retreating into shadowy corners whenever humans approached. One particular group caught her attention. 3 Caliph who whispered urgently to each other late at night when they thought no one was watching. Elena mentioned her observations to Captain Marcus Kane during one of their briefings. "It's almost like there are 2 factions within this group," she said, leaning over a holographic map of the ship. "Zinara leads the ones who want our help. But those others, I don't think they trust us. Or maybe they're hiding something." Kane frowned, his sharp features etched with concern. "Could be spies," he suggested grimly. "If what Zinara said about their homeworld is true, it wouldn't surprise me if they sent agents to keep tabs on these outcasts, or worse, use them to infiltrate Earth." To address the growing unease, Kane ordered increased surveillance of the Caliph quarters. Security cameras were installed discreetly, and guards rotated shifts outside their designated area. But even with these precautions, strange incidents began to occur. Tools went missing from the engineering bay. Unexplained power fluctuations disrupted systems temporarily. And once, A member of the crew reported seeing a shadowy figure darting through an unlit corridor near the cargo hold. When questioned, Zenera admitted that tensions existed within her people. "Not all of us share the same beliefs," she explained quietly, her voice tinged with sadness. "Some still cling to the ways of our homeworld. They fear humanity will judge us harshly, and perhaps they are right to worry." Her words only deepened Alina's suspicions. Late one evening, unable to sleep, she reviewed the security footage herself. What she found chilled her to the bone. In grainy black and white images, she spotted one of the Caliph slipping away from the group after hours. The alien moved stealthily, avoiding cameras whenever possible, until it reached a secluded maintenance room. There it met with another figure, a human technician who worked in communications. Alina immediately alerted Kane, who confronted the technician the next morning. Under pressure, the man confessed. He had been approached by one of the Caliph days earlier. They promised him wealth and influence if he helped them send encrypted messages back to their homeworld. The revelation sent shockwaves through the crew. Not only were there spies among the refugees, but they had already begun manipulating humans to further their agenda. "This changes everything," Kane growled, pacing the briefing room. "We can't bring them to Earth now, if word gets out that we harbored enemies." Alina disagreed. "We don't know how many are involved. Most of them seem innocent. If we abandon them now, we'd be condemning them for crimes they didn't commit." The debate raged on, leaving both sides frustrated and divided. Meanwhile, Zenera watched silently from the sidelines, her expression unreadable. She knew the fragile trust between her people and humanity was beginning to crumble, and unless someone acted quickly, it might shatter completely. As the Odyssey drew closer to Earth, Alina realized the hardest decisions lay ahead. Who could they trust? And more importantly, how far were they willing to go to protect the innocent without endangering their own world? The discovery of the Caliph spy network aboard the Odyssey cast a dark shadow over the mission. Trust, already fragile, began to erode further among both humans and aliens. Captain Marcus Kane ordered stricter measures, including round-the-clock monitoring of all communications and restricted movement for the Caliph refugees. Tensions simmered as the crew debated what to do next. Dr. Alina Voss, however, refused to give up on Zenera and her followers. She believed that not everyone aboard the ship was complicit in the deception. Determined to uncover the truth, she devised a plan with Kane's reluctant approval. Using advanced biometric scanners, disguised as routine medical equipment, they would screen each Caliph individually under the pretense of conducting health checks. The scans would detect anomalies in brain activity, patterns associated with deception or heightened stress. Zenera agreed to cooperate fully, understanding the gravity of the situation. "If there are traitors among us," she said solemnly, "then we must root them out, for your sake and ours." One by one, the Caliph were brought into the medical bay. Alina worked methodically, her hands steady despite the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Most of the scans came back normal, confirming the sincerity of those who truly sought refuge. But when it was the turn of the three suspicious Caliph Alina had noticed earlier, the results told a different story. Their neural readings spiked dramatically during specific questions about their intentions and loyalty. When confronted, two of them broke down, admitting they had been coerced into spying by leaders from their homeworld. They claimed fear for their family's safety had driven them to comply. However, the third, a tall, angular male named Rinus, remained defiant, his glowing eyes flashing with anger. "You think you can save us?" Rinus spat at Alina, his melodic voice now sharp and biting. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. Our people will never stop hunting us, and neither will yours once they learn the truth." Kane stepped forward, his voice cold. "What truth?" Rinus hesitated, glancing at Zenera before finally speaking. "Our exile wasn't just punishment. It was a test, a way to see if we could survive without our homeworld's resources. If we succeeded, they planned to use us as tools to infiltrate other species. That's why we sent the signal, to draw you in." Alina felt a chill run down her spine. This revelation painted a much darker picture than anyone had anticipated. The Caliph weren't merely victims. They were pawns in a larger game orchestrated by their ruthless rulers. Yet even amidst this betrayal, Zenara stood firm, refusing to let her resolve waver. "We may have been used," Zenara said softly but firmly, addressing both the humans and her own people. "But that doesn't mean we have no choice. We can still decide who we want to be. And I choose peace." Her words resonated deeply with some of the Caliph, who nodded in agreement. Others, however, looked uneasy, torn between loyalty to their homeworld and the hope of a new beginning. The division within their ranks was undeniable, but so was the opportunity for redemption. As the Odyssey approached Earth's orbit, Alina knew the real challenge lay ahead. Revealing the spy's existence to humanity would spark outrage and fear. Public opinion could sway either way, and the fate of the innocent Caliph rested precariously in the balance. Still, Alina clung to a sliver of hope. Perhaps through transparency and courage, they could prevent this crisis from spiraling out of control. For now, though, she focused on preparing her report, knowing that every word she wrote might determine whether the Caliph found sanctuary or condemnation. The moment the Odyssey returned to Earth, news of the Caliph's spies spread like wildfire. Despite Alina's efforts to present a balanced report, the media sensationalized every detail, painting the alien refugees as dangerous infiltrators sent to exploit humanity. Headlines screamed warnings of betrayal and invasion, fueling public outrage. Protests erupted in cities across the globe, with crowds chanting slogans ranging from "Protect our planet" to "No room for outsiders." Inside the United Nations Space Research Institute, UNSRI, tensions ran high. Politicians argued fiercely over how to handle the situation, their debates broadcast live for the world to see. Some advocated immediate expulsion of all Caliph, regardless of guilt or innocence. Others pushed for leniency, urging humanity to uphold its values of compassion and mercy. The division wasn't just political, it cut through society itself. Alina found herself thrust into the spotlight, her name splashed across news outlets as the scientist who had intercepted the original distress call. Reporters hounded her for interviews, demanding answers about why she had trusted the Caliph in the first place. Her calm demeanor cracked under the pressure, but she refused to back down. "Not all of them are our enemies," she insisted during a televised press conference. "Most are victims, just like us. Turning them away would make us no better than those who exiled them." Her words resonated with some, but not enough. Across social media platforms, conspiracy theories flourished. Fringe groups claimed the entire incident was staged by the government to distract from Earth's problems. Militant organizations called for preemptive strikes against the Caliph homeworld, arguing that humanity should strike before being attacked. Even within UNSRI, voices grew louder for aggressive action. Captain Marcus Kane watched the chaos unfold with growing frustration. He had always been skeptical of bringing the Caliph to Earth, and now his fears seemed justified. Yet even he couldn't ignore the injustice of condemning an entire species based on the actions of a few. During a heated meeting with UNSRI leadership, he voiced his concerns bluntly. "If we expel them without proof of wrongdoing, we're setting a dangerous precedent. What happens the next time someone cries for help? Will we turn a blind eye then too?" His question hung heavy in the air, unanswered. Meanwhile, Zenara and her followers remained isolated in a secure facility, shielded from the outside world, but painfully aware of the storm brewing around them. Through limited access to news feeds, they saw images of angry mobs holding signs calling for their removal. Zenara bore the weight of her people's suffering silently, her luminous eyes dimmed by sorrow. She knew the fragile trust between humans, and Caliph was slipping away, and fast. One evening, Alina visited Zenara in private, seeking solace in the quiet camaraderie they had built aboard the Odyssey. Sitting across from her in the sterile confines of the holding area, Alina admitted, "I don't know if I can fix this. People are scared, and fear makes them do terrible things. Zenara reached out, her translucent hand resting gently on Alina's arm. Fear is universal, she said softly. But so is hope. You must remind them of that. Inspired by Zenara's resilience, Alina resolved to fight harder. She began reaching out to influential figures, scientists, activists, and even sympathetic politicians, urging them to speak out in defense of the innocent Caliph. Slowly, a counter-movement began to take shape. Peace rallies sprang up in major cities, with banners reading "Refugees deserve sanctuary" and "Unity over fear." Though smaller than the anti-Caliph protests, these gatherings offered a glimmer of hope. Yet time was running out. Rumors circulated that the Caliph homeworld had detected the location of their exiles and was preparing a retrieval mission. If humanity didn't decide soon whether to protect or reject the refugees, the choice might be made for them, in blood. As the debate over the Caliph refugees raged on Earth, a new threat loomed on the horizon. UNSCRI's deep space sensors detected an incoming fleet, a massive armada bearing the unmistakable markings of the Caliph homeworld. The ships were moving with purpose, their trajectory aimed directly at Earth. It was clear they weren't coming to negotiate. Panic swept through the United Nations Space Research Institute, UNSRI. Military leaders scrambled to prepare defenses, while scientists worked around the clock to analyze the capabilities of the approaching vessels. Captain Marcus Kane stood before a holographic display of the enemy fleet, his jaw clenched tightly. "They're not here to retrieve their people," he said grimly. "This is an invasion force." Dr. Alina Voss felt a knot tighten in her stomach as she listened to the briefing. She had hoped for more time to sway public opinion in favor of the innocent Caliph, but now it seemed that time had run out. The spies among the refugees had likely already transmitted Earth's location back to their rulers, sealing humanity's fate. Yet amidst the chaos, one voice remained calm. Zenara's. "We must act quickly," Zenara urged during a private meeting with Alina and Kane. Her luminous eyes burned with determination. "If my people see me, if they hear my voice, some may listen. Not all are loyal to the warlords who rule our homeworld. Some will remember what we once stood for, peace and unity." Alina hesitated. Trusting Zenara carried risks, especially given the spy's betrayal. But without a better plan, it was their only hope. Together, they devised a daring strategy. Zenara would broadcast a direct appeal to the incoming fleet, using UNSCRI's communication systems to amplify her message across space. If even a fraction of the Caliph forces turned against their leaders, it could weaken the assault enough for Earth's defenses to hold. The plan required precise timing and coordination. While engineers prepared the transmission array, Alina and Kane worked closely with Zenara to craft her speech. Drawing on her memories of a time before the war, Zenara spoke of shared suffering, mutual understanding, and the futility of endless violence. Her words resonated deeply. Even Alina found herself moved by the raw emotion in Zenara's voice. When the moment came, Zenara stepped into the communications chamber, flanked by Alina and Kane. As the signal went live, her image projected outward, reaching every ship in the approaching fleet. "Brothers and sisters," she began, her melodic voice carrying both strength and vulnerability. "I am Zenara, exiled but unbroken. I stand alongside those who seek peace, not conquest. You have been told lies about these humans. They are not your enemies. Our true enemy is the hatred that divides us." For several agonizing minutes, there was no response. Then, slowly, something remarkable happened. A handful of ships peeled away from the main fleet, breaking formation. Their captains hailed Earth, declaring their allegiance to Zenara and pledging to aid humanity in defending against the rest of the Armada. Kane stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "It's working," he muttered, shaking his head. "She actually did it." But the victory was bittersweet. The majority of the fleet continued its advance, undeterred by the defections. Earth's military forces braced for impact, knowing the battle ahead would be brutal. Still, the unexpected alliance offered a glimmer of hope and proof that not all conflicts ended in bloodshed. As the first wave of enemy ships entered Earth's orbit, Elena turned to Zanera. "You've given us a fighting chance," she said quietly. "Now let's make sure we don't waste it." With renewed resolve, humanity prepared to face the storm alongside their unlikely allies, united by a fragile bond forged in desperation and trust. The skies above Earth were eerily quiet as humanity braced itself for the inevitable clash. The Caliph Armada loomed closer with each passing hour, their massive ships casting ominous shadows over the planet's atmosphere. Inside the United Nations Space Research Institute, UNSRI, every available resource was mobilized to prepare for the battle ahead. Engineers worked tirelessly to retrofit civilian vessels into makeshift warships, while scientists raced to adapt alien technology scavenged from the Odyssey mission. It was a race against time, and no one knew how much they truly had. Dr. Elena Voss stood in a bustling command center, her eyes scanning rows of monitors displaying real-time updates on the enemy fleet's movements. Beside her, Captain Marcus Kane barked orders to his crew, coordinating defensive strategies with military leaders across the globe. Despite their best efforts, the odds seemed insurmountable. The Caliph ships dwarfed Earth's fleet, their weapon systems far more advanced than anything humanity had encountered before. But hope lingered in the form of Zanera and her defectors. The rogue Caliph ships that had broken away from the main armada now orbited Earth alongside human forces, their captains offering what little support they could. Though outnumbered, these renegade Caliph brought invaluable knowledge of their people's tactics and weaknesses. Working side by side with human strategists, they devised daring plans to exploit gaps in the enemy's formation. Zanera herself became an integral part of the effort. Her presence inspired both humans and her own kind, bridging cultural divides even in the face of impending doom. She spent hours briefing pilots and engineers, explaining the intricacies of Caliph weaponry and shield systems. "Their strength lies in unity," she warned during one such session. "If we can break their coordination, we stand a chance." Elena watched as Zanera moved among the UNSRI staff, her luminous eyes filled with quiet resolve. There was something profoundly humbling about seeing this outcast leader rise above despair to fight for a cause greater than herself or her species. Yet despite Zanera's courage, Elena couldn't shake the gnawing fear that their preparations might not be enough. As the final hours ticked down, cities around the world prepared for the worst. Emergency shelters overflowed with civilians seeking refuge, while news broadcasts urged calm even as panic spread like wildfire. In space, the combined fleet of humans and rogue Caliph assembled at strategic points along Earth's orbital defense grid. Fighters armed with experimental pulse cannons lined up beside sleek Caliph interceptors, ready to meet the invaders head-on. When the first wave of enemy ships entered firing range, the silence shattered. Bright streaks of energy lit up the void as missiles and laser beams crisscrossed through space. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers, illuminating the darkness with bursts of destruction. Pilots maneuvered their craft with precision, honed through countless simulations, dodging enemy fire while launching counterattacks. Amidst the chaos, acts of heroism emerged. A young human pilot sacrificed his ship to protect a damaged Caliph vessel, buying its crew precious seconds to retreat. Elsewhere, a rogue Caliph commander led a daring assault on an enemy flagship, disabling its primary weapon system and giving Allied forces a critical advantage. Each small victory fueled determination, proving that cooperation could tip the scales, even against overwhelming odds. Yet the cost was staggering. Wreckage littered the battlefield, drifting silently as reminders of lives lost. Back on Earth, families huddled together, praying for loved ones fighting light years away. Elena clenched her fists as casualty reports streamed in, her heart heavy with grief, but also pride. Humanity wasn't just defending its home, it was forging alliances that transcended species. As the battle raged on, Zanera turned to Elena, her voice steady despite the turmoil around them. "This is only the beginning," she said softly. "Whatever happens next, remember, we are stronger together." In that moment, Alina realized the truth of those words. No matter the outcome, this conflict would change everything, for better or worse. The battle raged across the heavens, a chaotic symphony of light and destruction. Earth's defenders, humans and rogue Caliph alike, fought with everything they had, their ships weaving through the debris of shattered vessels as they tried to hold the line against the relentless Caliph armada. Explosions lit up the void like fireworks, but there was no celebration in this display. Every burst of energy marked another life lost, another sacrifice made in the desperate struggle to protect humanity's home. Dr. Alina Voss watched from the command center aboard the UNSRI flagship Aegis, her hands gripping the edge of the console so tightly her knuckles turned white. The tactical map showed the grim reality. Despite the defectors' efforts, the enemy fleet still outnumbered them 3-1. Their defenses were holding, for now, but cracks were beginning to show. Shields flickered on several human ships, and communications chatter grew frantic as pilots reported dwindling ammunition and failing systems. Captain Marcus Kane stood beside her, his face set in a mask of grim determination. "We can't keep this up forever," he muttered, his voice low enough that only Alina could hear him. "If we don't break their momentum soon, it's over." Alina nodded, her mind racing. She glanced at Sinara, who stood nearby, her luminous eyes fixed on the battle unfolding outside the viewport. The Caliph leader's expression was unreadable, but Alina knew she carried the weight of her people's survival and guilt on her slender shoulders. "Zinara," Alina said suddenly, turning to her, "you've seen how their commanders operate. Is there any way to disrupt their chain of command? If we can sow confusion among their ranks?" Zinara hesitated, then nodded slowly. "There is one thing," she replied. "Their central command ship, the largest vessel in the fleet, is where all orders originate. If we disable its communication array, the rest of the fleet will lose cohesion. But getting close enough won't be easy." Kane frowned. "It's heavily guarded. Any ship that approaches would be torn apart before it got within range." "I'll do it," Zinara said firmly, stepping forward. Her voice left no room for argument. "My people trust me more than they trust your weapons. If I broadcast directly to the soldiers aboard the command ship, some may hesitate long enough for you to strike." Before anyone could object, Zinara activated her personal communicator, linking herself to the enemy fleet's frequency. Her melodic voice echoed across the battlefield, cutting through the chaos. "Brothers and sisters, listen to me. This war is built on lies, lies meant to divide us and destroy what remains of our honor. Stand down, or you doom yourselves to serve those who care nothing for your lives." For a moment, the fighting seemed to pause. Ships on both sides hesitated, unsure how to respond. Then, slowly, cracks began to form in the enemy's ranks. Several smaller vessels broke formation, their captains clearly conflicted. Others wavered, their movements becoming less coordinated as doubt spread among the crew. Seizing the opportunity, Kane barked orders to launch a concentrated attack on the command ship. A squadron of human fighters, escorted by rogue Caliph interceptors, surged forward, dodging enemy fire as they closed in on their target. The assault was brutal and costly, with multiple ships obliterated in the attempt, but finally, a well-placed missile struck the command ship's communication array, sending sparks erupting into space. The effect was immediate. Without centralized control, the remaining Caliph fleet faltered, their once unified assault devolving into disarray. Some ships retreated entirely, while others engaged in sporadic skirmishes before withdrawing. The tide of the battle had turned, but not without a heavy price. As the surviving forces regrouped, Alina looked out at the wreckage floating silently in orbit. Tears welled in her eyes as she thought of the lives lost. Yet amidst the devastation, she felt a spark of hope. Humanity, and Zinara's courage, had proven stronger than fear. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to breathe. But the victory was bittersweet. The Caliph homeworld wouldn't forget this defeat, and tensions between species would linger. As Zenera approached her, Elena whispered, "This isn't the end, is it?" The aftermath of the battle left Earth scared but standing. The skies above were eerily quiet, save for the drifting wreckage of ships that served as grim reminders of the conflict. Cities on the planet below bore the scars of orbital bombardments, with smoldering craters and collapsed buildings marking the places where enemy fire had breached Earth's defenses. Yet, amidst the destruction, there was an undeniable sense of survival, a fragile victory snatched from the jaws of defeat. In the days following the retreat of the Caliph Armada, humanity began the slow process of rebuilding. Emergency response teams worked tirelessly to clear debris and provide aid to displaced families, while engineers assessed the damage to critical infrastructure. Meanwhile, the UNSRI command center buzzed with activity as leaders debated what came next. Though the immediate threat had passed, everyone knew this was only a temporary reprieve. Dr. Elena Voss found herself at the heart of these discussions, her role shifting from scientist to diplomat. Alongside Zenera, she addressed the United Nations Security Council in a historic session broadcast worldwide. Standing before a room filled with skeptical politicians and weary citizens, they outlined the events leading up to the battle, and the sacrifices made by both humans and Caliph to secure Earth's safety. "We cannot undo the pain caused by this war," Elena said, her voice steadied despite the weight of her words. "But we can choose how we move forward. These refugees, these outcasts, are not our enemies. They risked everything to stand with us when it mattered most. Turning them away now would dishonor every life lost protecting them." Zenera stepped forward, her luminous eyes meeting the gaze of each council member. "My people have wronged yours," she admitted, her melodic voice tinged with sorrow. "For that, I offer my deepest apologies, but I also ask you to see the truth. Not all Caliph seek domination. Some of us desire peace, a chance to rebuild what was broken. Let us work together to forge a new path, one free of hatred and fear." Her plea struck a chord with many in the audience. Images of rogue Caliph pilots fighting alongside humans during the battle circulated widely, reminding people of the courage displayed by their unlikely allies. Public opinion began to shift, with calls for compassion growing louder than demands for expulsion. Still, skepticism lingered, and the decision to grant asylum required careful negotiation. To ease tensions, Zenera proposed a bold plan: the creation of a joint human Caliph colony on Mars. This settlement would serve as a neutral ground where both species could coexist, learn from each other, and build trust over time. Resources salvaged from the battlefield, including technology from destroyed Caliph ships, would be used to accelerate construction. The idea sparked cautious optimism, offering a tangible step toward reconciliation. As plans for the colony took shape, small signs of progress emerged closer to home. Survivors of the battle, both human and Caliph, shared stories of camaraderie and sacrifice. A young human engineer collaborated with a rogue Caliph technician to repair damaged communication arrays, their laughter echoing through the halls of UNSRI. In another instance, a grieving family invited a wounded Caliph soldier into their home, finding solace in shared loss. Elena watched these moments unfold with a mixture of pride and hope. She knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. Old prejudices wouldn't vanish overnight, and the shadow of the Caliph homeworld still loomed large. But for the first time, she saw glimpses of a future where cooperation might outweigh conflict. Late one evening, as she walked through the dimly lit corridors of UNSRI, Zenera joined her. Together, they gazed out at the stars, now brighter against the backdrop of Earth's recovery. "Do you think we've truly changed anything?" Zenera asked softly. Elena smiled faintly. "Maybe not yet, but if we keep trying, if we keep believing, someday we will." And for the first time since intercepting that desperate signal, she allowed herself to believe it too. Months passed since the battle that had brought humanity and the Caliph together in an uneasy alliance. The scars of war were still visible, both on Earth's surface and in the hearts of those who had fought. But so were the first signs of healing. Construction on the joint human-Caliph colony on Mars was well underway, its skeletal structures rising against the red horizon like a promise of renewal. For the first time in history, two species were working side by side to build something greater than themselves. Dr. Elena Voss stood aboard the Odyssey, now repurposed as a transport vessel shuttling supplies between Earth and Mars. She watched as crates of equipment and materials were loaded into the cargo bay, her mind reflecting on how far they'd come since intercepting that desperate transmission. What had started as a cry for help had evolved into a shared mission, a testament to resilience and unity in the face of adversity. On Mars, progress was steady but not without challenges. Differences in technology and culture often led to misunderstandings, but these moments became opportunities for learning rather than division. Human engineers marveled at the Caliph's organic-based machinery, which seemed almost alive, while the Caliph adapted eagerly to human methods of resource management and construction. Over time, their combined efforts began to yield results faster than anyone had anticipated. Zenera played a pivotal role in bridging gaps between the two groups. Her leadership inspired both humans and Caliph alike, fostering trust where there had once been suspicion. She spent hours mediating disputes, teaching language classes, and even sharing stories of her people's history during communal gatherings. Through her actions, she reminded everyone that peace required effort and patience. Back on Earth, public sentiment continued to shift. Documentaries highlighting the bravery of rogue Caliph pilots and interviews with Zenera helped reshape perceptions, turning former skeptics into advocates for cooperation. Schools began incorporating lessons about interspecies diplomacy into their curriculums, ensuring future generations would grow up understanding the value of collaboration over conflict. One evening, as the sun dipped below the Martian horizon, casting long shadows across the burgeoning settlement, Elena joined Zenera outside one of the domed habitats. Together, they looked out at the sprawling landscape, dotted with glowing lights from workstations and living quarters. The air inside their suits crackled faintly with static, but neither spoke for a moment, content to simply take it all in. "This place, it feels alive," Zenera said finally, her voice soft but filled with wonder. "Not just because of our machines or tools, but because of what we've built together." Elena nodded, her breath catching slightly. It's proof that change is possible, that fear doesn't have to win. As weeks turned into months, the colony flourished. Scientists collaborated on groundbreaking research, blending human ingenuity with Caliph biotechnology to develop solutions for everything from sustainable agriculture to advanced medical treatments. Artists from both species created murals and sculptures celebrating their shared journey, transforming barren walls into vibrant tributes to hope and perseverance. But perhaps the most profound transformation occurred within individuals. Children born on Mars knew no other reality than one where humans and Caliph lived as equals. They played together under artificial skies, their laughter echoing through corridors designed by ancestors divided only years before. It was a small yet powerful reminder that the future wasn't bound by the past. One day, Elena stood before a crowd gathered to celebrate the colony's official inauguration. Beside her, Zenera raised a hand in quiet acknowledgement of the cheers. As Elena addressed the audience, her words carried conviction born of experience. Today marks not just the beginning of a new chapter for humanity and the Caliph, but for all species willing to reach across divides and find common ground. Let this be a beacon, a signal to the stars that peace is always worth fighting for. As applause erupted around them, Elena glanced at Zenera, whose glowing eyes reflected the same determination that had guided them through every trial. Though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, they faced them united, not as strangers, but as partners forging a brighter tomorrow. And somewhere among the stars, another message might already be traveling, waiting for someone brave enough to answer.